Welcome. Aloha and welcome to Experience 53 Digits Part 5. We're going to add time-stamped notes to our contacts so we can actually keep track of when we had contact, what we did, etc. So we're going to add it, so we will have this form that we can add a note to the contact. We'll show the notes that we've created. And one additional goal of this experience is to learn how to design and implement multiple interrelated collections so that we want to be able to create a simple data model. So what is a data model? It's a way of setting up the data in your collections such that they have relationships. And they have fields which are known as foreign keys. And once you get a hang of having these foreign keys and these relationships between these objects or these documents in your collection, it becomes very easy to set up a complex application. Not that digits is a complex application. So let's take a look at what we have so far. So we have a user, and again in Mongo we get this unique ID for each user. They have an email and they have a username. So we've got our admin at foo.com and our John at foo.com. Now, if we take a look at the contact collection, again, each contact has its own unique ID, has a first name, last name, address, image, description, and an owner. And so we just put the owner username to make it simpler. We could have used the ID, but it's nice to be able to look at it. And it makes these collections easy to have a publication. So we did it. We could have used an ID, but it makes it easier when I'm looking at the database. When I see John at foo.com, it's much easier than saying, oh, PD3LX, blah, blah, blah. So it's much easier if I got that, but you don't need it either way. So now let's take a look at what we have multiple notes associated with a contact. So each note is associated with exactly one contact. So we can have our ID for our note, the actual text of the note, when it was created, the ID of the contact that this note is associated, and again, we're going to have an owner so that when we publish the notes and you subscribe to the notes, you only get the notes that you own. So we've got this last one, admin. So this, because it's owned by admin, this note is about the contact that owns from the admin. So it's either Kim, or if we did the create, if we created Scott Robertson for admin like we did in the previous one, it might be associated with Scott. Can't tell, but we could look up this contact ID and see that it is Kim Binstead. You know, G-U-A-J, G-U-A-J. So this note is associated with contact Kim Binstead. One of the reasons why we have the owner field just to make subscriptions and publications easier. Otherwise, we'd have to do some sort of stepping through. This is simple denormalization. It's a database term. When you're designing your own, it can be helpful to create a set of tables that look like this to help you come together. And if you take a look at the Bofolios project, we have a set of collections that map profiles to interests, profiles to projects, projects to interests. So there's a way of creating these collections that sort of map one object to another object, just like we sort of are mapping a note to a contact this way. So, again, suggest that you watch this screencast before you begin. We're going to merge our contact forms branch into main. So let's see if I can find. I've got my contact forms. It's just been updated. So I want to switch to, I'm going to switch to main. Then I want to update from merge into current branch. And it's my contacts form. Create a merge commit. Push to origin so it gets up to GitHub. We might want to run npm run start. vim run start. Again, we've got our browser list warning. We're not finished. We're going to do some resets, so let's not worry about that. We'll deal with it when we get done. So we had a reset, so we just added those items. I can log in as admin. Go to the admin page, we see we've got all three, we list our contacts, we have it, we have our edit. So we've got the forms, we can add a contact, we can edit a contact. So we've got our contact forms branch has now been merged into main, so we're good to go. So we can now take a look and start our WAD. So we want to start our timer. We're going to call notes 1 is our branch. Create a new branch. 1. Publish our branch so it gets up to GitHub. We've already got the start. It's running, I believe. Let's double check. It is running. And we're on notes 1. That's good. So we're on the right branch. So we want to create the note collection. So we're going to copy the content of the contact directory. So we want to go API. I'm going to copy that. And we're going to paste it, and we're going to call it note. Then we want to update. We did the copy, note, rename contact to notes. Shift F6. You rename a constant used in notes? Yes. So we open this up. This is now, we want to change this to notes. So again, Shift F6. Rename the code occurrences. We want to call this notes. We want to change this to notes. It's a collection. What is the schema should have a note, a contact ID, and an owner, and a created at. So we have a note, contact ID, which is the ID of the contact that this node is associated with. The owner. I already have owner, so I don't need that. And I have a created at date. Type date. So I need to, where is that upset? Oh, colon. So it's a date. We attach the schema. We have a publication for the user, and we have a publication for the admin. We're actually not necessarily going to use the admin publication, but we could. So we want to notes, let's just contact with note. Replace, we want to keep that. Just want to make sure all my comments are up to good. Notes, okay. We've got our, we want to edit the publication, so we publish the notes for the currently logged in user. So in startup, server, publications, not admin. We want to do notes here. Notes. Username, notes. We've got an extra space. Check to see we've got our imports. We've got notes. And if we wanted to do it, we could also copy for the admin, although we're not going to have a, let's do it. So notes. And notes. The actual practice WOD doesn't talk about doing that, but you might as well do it for both. So now we want to create a note component. So we're going to make a copy of the imports UI components contact and call it note. So UI component contact, copy, paste, note. And then we're going to change this to a Shift F6. And we want to do the refactor. Now again, a note has a note. So now this is a note. And it's just a list group item. It's very simple. So I'm actually just going to copy this. And it's going to be paste this. And the prop is a note, has a note, a contact ID, an owner, and a created at is a prop type. It's not a string. Instance of date. Doesn't have a description. I'm getting an error. Why? Oh, if I could type. And then I need to import my list group item, or my list group. So it's not a React router, so I don't need that. But this is a list group. And I don't need my card or my image. So it's a real simple thing. It's a list group item. It's got a paragraph. We're using the font width slider, so it makes it gray. And then we take the created at date, we convert it to a local date string, and we're using the locale of English US. And then we have another paragraph, which is the actual note associated with the note. So that's good. So now we want to add the note list group to each contact. So now let's create the contact. So we want to add this list group above the edit link, and so above the edit link. So we want to add our list group. So above the edit link. But now we need to have, we want to import note. Export default note. From note. not found. Oh, it's not a, it's an export default. So notes is not passed in, so I'm going to need to create a prop type. So I'm going to add the idea, oops, notes. But now I need the prop type. It is a prop types dot array of a prop type dot shape and now I need the prop types for the shape, or excuse me, for note. So I can go to note and say, copy this. And then is required. So I need this array of notes. So now I have these notes. So now I can talk about the ID and the note, put a space, and then I need to import list group. From that. And so now my contact needs to have an array of notes passed in and the contact. So now the list contacts page needs to pass in the contact and its associated notes. So now let's go take a look at the list contacts page. So we get the array of contacts, but we also want to get the notes. So the notes, and so we're going to have a subscription, and we're going to say const, what are we going to, subscription to, subscribe to notes dot user publication. So that's the second subscription, and so ready will be when the first subscription is ready and subscription 2 is ready. So we'll be ready when both of those are things, and then we want to get the note documents. So now we say const note items equals notes dot find. So get all of them dot fetch. So that will give me an array of the note items. So now I want to say so now ready will be true when both the subscription to contacts and notes. So now we need to pass in, here we also need to have the set of notes. And so we're gonna have the contact be contact, that still will be work, and then our notes will be this filter. So we're going to take the notes, all the notes that I own, and I'm going to filter them when the contact ID matches up. So for this contact, I want the contact ID to match the contact ID in the note. So I'm only going to pass in the notes for this contact here. And so we take the notes, which has all the notes that I own, and then I'm only going to filter the ones that match the contact. So now let's see what's wrong. Notes.find, that's not right. Very good. Notice I get the stack error, and it tells me that notes.find is not a function. It even tells me on line 24 in list contact, line 24, it's wrong dot collection. And then I get back, so I had an error. So let's log in, sign in as John. Change me, list contacts. So we've got this, we don't have any notes. If we take a look at Meteor, subscriptions, we got it, Mini Mongo. There's a notes collection, but it's empty, so we don't have any notes yet. We have 2 contacts, but we have no notes. So that's looking correct. Not great, but it's looking correct. So again, we wanted to make sure we had no errors. We did. We fixed the error. Edit link, there's a new section that's empty white space. That's where the list group is. Let's see if we can find that list group. Inspect. Card body. We have our list group. There it is. There's our list group for our notes. Doesn't exist, or it's empty, but it's there. So now we want to create a copy of add contact and call it add note, but it's a component, not a page. So we're going to put it in the components directory. So add contact is a form that has, we can add things, so we want to copy that. We're going to paste it here, but we're going to call it add note. We want to change this, Shift F6. Refactor, do the refactor. Now the schema for a note is a string. We have the owner, which is a string, We have a contact ID, which is a string. And we have a created at, which is a date. Date, and we don't have a description. So that's our form schema. We create our bridge, we have our note. The submit, we're going to pull out note, owner, well, we already get owner, contact ID, and created at. And we don't need the image, and we don't need that. And it's not the contacts collection, it's the notes collection. And we're passing in note, comma, contact, and created at. Okay, so we got the on the submit, so when we do that, so we have a container, add note, auto form, submit, it's we're going to make it a long text field. I believe it's a long text field. What do we got? Text field. Oh, text field. Oops. Let's actually card body text field. So there's our card body text field, submit field, error fields, and we're going to add the hidden fields. And we'll have to add hidden field. We no longer need contacts. Note field. So now the add note prop types, because we want to pass in the, you can see the add note component needs to be passed in the owner and the contact ID. So we need to pass in the owner and the contact ID, because we're going to use the owner and the contact ID from here. So we don't actually need to pull that out of the data, to be honest. And we get the owner from there. But now we need the prop types. That's not the right way. Let's prop types. Back to add note. Equals an object, and it's going to be owner, owner prop types dot string dot is required, and a contact ID prop types dot string dot is required. So now we've got to pass in the owner and the contact ID for the add note form. And so now we want to add the add note to our contact, and we're going to do it after the list group. So we can do add note to the contact after the list group, and contact needs to have an owner. And so we've got the contact ID, we got the contact, and then we have to import add note. So let's see. Should look like that. Well, let's make sure our form in our add note, should say add timestamped note. So now let's cross our fingers. Field not found in schema where use field? So where do I have that description? Ah, right there. Note, not description. Forgot to fix that. So that's looking about right, but I think that's a little too big. That's way too big. So let's go in and change this H2 to be a 4. That's better. Pretty close. So now let's see what happens. So I say, had lunch and discussed teaching, pedagogy. If I can spell, I can't spell. So now we've got a timestamp note. Today, had lunch, discussed teaching pedagogy. So now, let's take a look at Meteor, Mini Mongo, notes collection. We have a note with an ID. Have the note, contact ID is something created at. And if I, so here's our JSON ID of the note, contact ID created at, and then the owner, since I'm logged in as John. So that looks correct. So it's a single contact. So now we could update. We could, but it's not part of this WAD. We could go in and update list contacts admin. Well, we'd have to update contact admin to do the notes, as just like we did for list contact. But since we didn't, and I'm not logged in as admin, I don't see the notes because I did not update this contact admin. But I do see the notes for the list or the contact itself. So if we wanted to, we could update contact admin to include the lists, and then we would need to subscribe to the notes admin user publication, which would get all the notes, and then we could apply them to the right contact. So let's stop. Let's run lint. Control-C. Run lint. I've got errors. Bummers. Meteors defined but never used. We don't use the prop types. Oh, we did. Oh. It's in the wrong order. I need to move this up before the relative. Direct imports need to be before relative imports. So it was in the wrong place. So I needed to move it up. So let's run this again. No lint errors. Make sure that we've got our changes. What is notes 1 finished in n minutes, which is 29 minutes. origin. Make sure I stop my timer. View on GitHub. Make sure to look at notes. App. Imports. API. I've got my note collection. That's good. Go to UI. Components. Add note. Good. I have my note. Looks good. So if you want to do it a second time, I recommend you go back to your main branch, create a branch node 2, start again, and you should be able to finish this in 50 minutes. Hopefully this is helpful. We created a very simple data model where we've got notes that have a contact ID and an owner. That way we can, given a contact ID, we know what notes are associated with that contact, and so we can keep track of notes for individual contacts. Hope that was educational. Thank you for your attention.